The film is called Jonestown, The Life and Death of People's Temple, and it's just the latest remarkable accomplishment in the career of this extraordinary filmmaker, whose previous documentary credits include Marcus Garvey, Look for Me in the Whirlwind, and the highly acclaimed The Murder of Emmett Till, which went on to earn Mr. Nelson an Emmy and a special jury prize at Sundance. It is a great honor to welcome Mr. Stanley Nelson to our program. Mr. Nelson, are you with us?
I sure am. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being with us. I've been so excited to talk to you about this film ever since I saw it a few months back, and it just will not leave me. It stays with me. It's a remarkable film. So I'm looking forward to talking to you about that. But tell me about your how you got started working documentaries, what it was about the documentary form that spoke to you.
Well, it's really funny. I kind of fell into it. I went to film school at City College in New York, and I had no interest in documentaries really. I got a job with a documentary film company, and just fell in love with it, and fell in love with making films and kind of working in films. I think that's one of the great things about documentaries is if you're really lucky, you spend a lot of time making films rather than planning them or thinking about them or trying to figure out how to do them, but you really spend a lot of time making films.
I'm sorry to hit you with such a heavy question right off the bat, but do you feel that documentaries have the power to change lives or at least to alter thought in some way?
I think so. I think sometimes, I think we don't want to say that films, can do more than they actually can do, but I think that, right now, it's really just a really golden time for documentary films. I think that documentary films can do so much that we're not getting in feature films, that we're not getting in TV. We kind of don't go beyond the surface of so many stories, and documentary films can really do that. And I think that people are open to docs now. People are really used to seeing docs and wanting to see documentary films and wanting to think about things in a different way, and it frees documentary filmmakers to do things in a different way and try to really put some kind of creativity and art into what we do.
Yeah, what do you attribute to that kind of rise of the documentary form that we've seen these past few years?
I think so many things are coming together at once. I think that in some ways, people are so disappointed by what's coming out of Hollywood and what's coming out of TV. I think that people, are kind of getting used to documentary films in a lot of ways, for different ways. People are seeing, reality shows, which are kind of docs, and I think people have seen documentary films and have really been inspired by them. So, you go to see, one of Michael Moore's films, and you say, wait a minute, this is really entertaining. Or you go see Inconvenient Truth, and you say, wow, I learned something, but I also was entertained by it. And so it makes you open to wanting to see another film. So I think that there's a lot of things that are happening. I think there's just more documentary films being made, too. The equipment is easier to use and lighter and cheaper, and so there's more things that are coming out.
Yeah, definitely. So what sparked the idea for Jonestown for you?
It's one of those funny things where I heard People's Temple members on the radio. It was one of the anniversaries, I think it was the 25th anniversaries of the death in Guyana, and I heard some members on the radio, and the story that they were telling was so different from the story that I thought I knew. I, like so many people, had heard the story. I was around at the time when the people died, and I thought I knew the beginning, middle, and end. That over 900 people went out to the jungle, and they were crazy, and they followed this crazy man to their death. But when I heard them on the radio, they were talking about a People's Temple that I had never heard about this church that was socially active, that was integrated, that had these kind of high ideals, that wasn't crazy. They weren't talking, craziness about a spaceship landing from outer space or anything like that. They were talking about changing the world that we know, and I think, it sounded so good. And that's kind of what got me, interested in the story.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yes.
We have a question in the chat room,
yes.
from Mr. Nelson. One of our listeners wants to know, did you discover elements of Jim Jones that you weren't aware of, good or bad, while making the film?
I think there were so many things that we discovered in making the film. I mean, one of the things that we came to really early on was that, if these people weren't crazy for joining People's Temple, then how are we going to portray them? How are we going to show that there was some good in People's Temple? If they weren't crazy, why did they join People's Temple, and why did they stay?
Right.
And so in the first third or so of the film, we really try to show what the good was in People's Temple. You see their services. We were lucky we were able to find an album that the choir recorded. Which is like this great gospel music. I mean, it's just great music. And we talked to people about we talked to a lot of People's Temple members. About their experiences, and they talked about what it was that made them join, what it was that they found there. I think that was fascinating. So I think it was really important for us to say that there was some good in it, that that there was something that attracted people. And I think that was surprising. What Jim Jones' message was.
Right.
Yeah, and it's powerful too, because they had a vision of creating a world where complete integration, regardless of social or class structure, and for a while, I mean, it worked. I mean, they were succeeding.
Right, and I think that's another important point. That was another important point for us, is to show that they did succeed for a while. I mean, why did they stay? Well, because for so many people, they found in People's Temple what they were looking for. They found this integrated society. They found this thing that was a movement that was really trying to change the world, that they were really part of something that was bigger than themselves. One guy told me this great story. He was about 18 when he joined People's Temple, and he said that he would work all day, at one of the People's Temple jobs, and then in the evening People's Temple ran all these old folks' homes, and he and a bunch of other teenagers would go over to the old people's house, and they would cook dinner. They prepared dinner with the old people, and then they'd sit and they'd eat, with the old people, and they'd sit around, late into the night and just talk. These young people and these old people, and he talked about what a marvelous time that was, in his life, and I know, how it must have been for the elderly people, to have these young people around and have them cook with them, and it just sounded, idyllic, it sounded, wow, that's just great, and that's the kind of People's Temple we wanted to show, because it was really important to show the good so that you could understand the bad.
Yeah, and there are only a handful of survivors from that day.
Right. There were only I think 5 people who actually survived the taking of the poison, and there's about I think 3 or 4 of them are alive now, and 2 of them are in the film. Who actually there, who actually saw their families die.
And those testimonies are definite emotional highlights of the film. But
yes, they are.
Now, was there hesitation to cooperate? Was there a lot of having to talk them into where you were coming from with this documentary before they would?
One thing that we did early on was I said that one thing I was not going to do was try to talk anybody into being part of it, and that we tried to meet with every single member of People's Temple that we could find. Because there besides the 5 people who survived that day, there were a number of people who just didn't happen to be there.
Sure.
They still had people who were stationed in San Francisco, and so there were a number of people who were part of People's Temple who are still living, and we talked to a bunch of them, probably 30 or 40, and I said, I'm not going to try to convince them to be in the film. I'm just not going to do that. I'm going to talk. I want to try to meet with them, before we film without a tape recorder, and I would ask them if I could take notes, but I'm not going to try to convince them. And then, I say, we'd like to interview you for the film, but it's up to you. And I think that honesty, really helped, because there were people that we interviewed. A one woman who has teenage kids who her kids don't even know that she was part of People's Temple.
Mm.
And so I could really understand her not wanting to be in a film.
Sure.
Know? And I understand that, and I totally respected that. And I think the people who did agree to be in the film, did something that was really, really brave to come out and talk about it in public, because so many of them were scorned and laughed at and ostracized when they came back. I mean, people were fired. They came back to the States and they were working. And then people would find out that they had been members of People's Temple. They were fired from their jobs. And,
sure.
They really had to put their lives back together. And a lot of them suffered, a great deal.
Well, yeah, and that's just it, because there's one incredibly haunting testimony. This gentleman discusses having seen his wife and infant baby dying.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And when you're in the process of filming that kind of testimony, on the other side of the camera, I'm interested just in terms of your process. Do you give them space and let them come to that moment themselves? Do you try not to interfere, because it's really all about having to have the camera record their story, uninterrupted? But
well, one thing that we did in the interviews is to try to lead people through their time in People's Temple chronologically.
Yeah.
So I think that one of the subtle things that happens in the film is they talk about their first day, and we said, talk about your first day, but as if you don't know the outcome. Just go back. This is your first day. I don't want to hear, I really liked it, but if I had only known what was going. Just talk to me about that first day.
Yeah.
And lead me through. Just be in that day. So during the interview, during the film, you kind of see people, it develop, what they thought of People's Temple. So at the beginning, they're very up and they're happy, until when they talk about that last day, they're pretty devastated by their experience. And we just tried to give them space to let them tell that story. And it's a funny thing as a documentary filmmaker, because as you're getting these kind of very emotional story, part of you is devastated with the person who's telling the story.
Yeah.
Part of you is devastated, but then let's face it, there's another part of you that's saying, "Oh man, this is great."
Yeah.
I got this great material.
It's
Here
gold.
It
Yeah.
This is beautiful.
Yeah.
Don't stop. And it's something that as a filmmaker, you don't talk about a lot. You don't talk about it. At screenings. That there's this other side of you that's kind of saying, yeah, come on, this is beautiful. Don't stop.
Yeah, but on the other hand, I mean, obviously you're a filmmaker of great compassion, and I'm sure, like me, your first instinct would be to go over and try to comfort them as they're having this incredibly emotional moment, but you can't, So I often think about that, the difficult position that must be for the documentarian.
Yeah, I mean, there were a couple of times, especially with the story that you're talking about, where guy talks about having seen his wife and son die, that were just it was just really emotionally terrible for me. It's kind of like you feel really it's just this terrible feeling.
Yeah.
Immediately afterwards, because he was he's crying and he's devastated by having to tell this story again. And I remember we just stopped the camera and took a break, and I just was, I'm sorry, I had to do that, but we were going to have to go there, and I'm sorry. But
at the same time, I know that they've probably seen the film. Is there a sense of catharsis for them at this point?
I think so. I mean, the people of People's Temple have been really, really supportive and really have really loved the film. I mean, one of the crazy things that happened was the first screening that we had. We rented a little small theater and invited People's Temple members. It was really for them, but we knew we didn't want the whole audience to be People's Temple members, so we invited some friends and family, and then we tried to get as many People's Temple members as we could. And before the screening, I said, after the screening, we're not going to have a question and answer. We'll just go. We're going to have, some drinks and food in the lobby, and we can all just mill around and talk about it. And we screened the film, and then we all went out to the lobby, and I looked around and realized that it was all my friends and family, but none of the People's Temple members had come out of the theater. And I went and peeked back in, and they were just sitting there, devastated. And, and it was, and I didn't know what, if they were devastatedly mad or just what. And they sat there for 10, 15 minutes, and they came out and said that, it was a very powerful experience for them, but they thought that it had captured what their experience was in People's Temple better than anything that had been done.
Yeah.
And so they've been great. I mean, they've come to screenings all over the country and have just been really, really, supportive and loving and of the film and of me. They've been just great.
Yeah. It has to be kind of a community kind of experience when you work on a documentary or any film. You kind of form your own community, and that's a bond that's hard to break. But I wanted to ask you about Jim Jones himself, and you can see the qualities that kind of made him very powerful and captivating, and his message was very positive for the most part. But what was faulty in him?
He was nuts.
Yeah.
There you have it.
I mean, I don't know, how to, put it any other. I mean, I think that, one of the fascinating things was that, we went back, and he was, Jim Jones was raised in this really small town in Indiana, rural Indiana, and we went to the town, and it was just really kind of an amazing experience because we found people who went to school with him when he was a little kid, and it was just really one of those funny experiences where we're sitting there talking to them and they're saying, yeah, we used to play with Jim Jones when we were 5. They said, yeah, you want to see some pictures of us playing? And they went in the back and brought out these pictures of them and these snapshots of them and Jim Jones, like on their porch at 5 years old and stuff, and they talked about how he used to kill animals and these prayer services for animals and that he would kill and stuff like that, and you just realized that early on there was something really off about it, that it was something, where does that stuff come from? I his parents had passed away a long time ago. He had no brothers and sisters, so you really don't know, if it was, they locked him in a closet or something, or if it was just something that he was born with. But apparently, from early on, he was not, in the
right
that we would call normal.
Yeah, and I'm curious about what it must be like to be a relative of someone not famous, but infamous, and there's a big difference there, like Jim Jones. And I know you interviewed Jim Jones Jr.
Yeah,
for the film.
Yeah, I mean, it's really funny because one thing that I learned in this film, is that so much of how we see events and what we take from it, depends on who we are, and our DNA. So there are people who are still devastated by what happened, and there are people who seem to be fairly normal.
Mm-hmm.
I think that one of the things that I came to believe, and this was kind of way after the film, after we had done a number of screenings, and it took me a long time to realize this, was that I think that it really depended on what people lost and how they lost it.
Yeah. So
that the people who kind of brought their families in to People's Temple,
right.
who were responsible, said, one woman said, I'm going to People's Temple, I'm going to join, she said this to her husband and kids, she said, and if you don't want to join, that's fine, but I'm going to leave you, and I'm going to join. And she brought her husband and kids in to People's Temple, and her children ended up dying. And she didn't, because she just didn't happen to be there that night. And she's devastated still. She carries around this aura of sadness with her. With Jim Jones, I think it was very different. Jim Jones Jr. He's Jim Jones' adopted son. So Jim Jones Jr. is African American, which is just kind of great. And he but he, I think that he doesn't feel the responsibility that other people feel.
Yeah.
He was adopted. He was about 18 when the deaths occurred, and his life was turned upside down, and I think he was devastated for a time. I think he's been able to get over it because he was not responsible,
right,
for anybody's death.
Yeah, it just has to be a tremendous, absolutely not responsible, but there has to be a tremendous burden, and it's right there in his name. I mean, he hasn't changed his name. His name is Jim Jones Jr.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And he's, Jim, and he came to a lot of screenings with me, and we spent a lot of time together. And he's someone who I genuinely came to really, really, not only admire but really like as a human being. He's a funny guy and a great guy. But he said that he for a time he called himself Jimmy Jones or something like that, or James Jones, and he said in some ways it was disrespectful to the memory of the People's Temple, and to the good of who my father was, and the good of what my family was, for me to try to run around and hide who I am.
Right.
We went to the screening, and he said this amazing thing, because somebody got up from the audience and said, "Well, do you hate your father?" And he said, look, this is the guy that took me out of an orphanage when I was 3 months old and gave me a life and a family.
Yeah.
This is the guy who, taught me how to shoot a basketball and play basketball with me. This is the guy who would sit down with me and do my homework with me. This is my father, and I loved him for that.
Yeah.
And this is also the guy who devastated my life and devastated so many other people's lives. And I hate him for that. So do I love him or do I hate him? He said, I feel both.
Yeah. It's a big conflict there.
Excuse me, I have another question.
Yeah, go ahead.
From the chat room. Mr. Nelson, one of our listeners would like to know if any of Mr. Jones' natural children survived.
Yeah, he only had one natural child, Stephen Jones, and he did survive. He is not in the film. He did not want to participate in the film. And again, as I said, I just one pact I made with myself was I would not try to convince people to be in the film if they said they didn't want to be in it, and so he's not in the film.
I think if there's one criticism I've read, it's that I've read that it doesn't necessarily answer the question why. I mean, why they did it, and I think you do offer some explanations, but the why is largely unknowable, isn't it?
That's what I think. I think that our purpose in the film was not to tell you why, because I don't think anybody can ever tell you why.
Yeah. That's very true.
So if you can't tell why, does that mean you can't make a film about it? And I don't think that's the case. And so it's something that in some ways we tried to show you what happened and how it happened and what led up to it. But I don't know if there ever can be a why. And I don't think that there can ever be a why for us for a lot of reasons. One is we really don't know on some level why. But I think two, it's hard, it's impossible for most people to look at suicide. Most people in the United States and the society we live in to look at suicide as being totally irrational. Okay, there's one theory that says that these people made a choice. That they chose to die together, and that and that they had established their own culture, in some ways their own world.
Sure.
And in that culture and in that world, to commit suicide together and to choose to die together rather than to they felt that they were not going to be able to live together anymore. That was going that their society was going to end, and to make that choice is not irrational within the bounds of their society.
Yeah.
Now, is that something that we wanted to spend, an hour and a half trying to explain to people? No, I don't think it, because I don't think, even if I tell you that, most people are going to say, yeah, sure,
Well, it's over 900 deaths of men, women, and a great number of children, and there's nothing tidy about that. There's no...
No, not at all.
Yeah.
No, and I think that in the film we try to show you that there's certainly a good number of those people were murdered.
Yes.
Children, I think there were over 250, people who were under 18, they had no choice. They, it wasn't like they understood what was going on.
Yeah.
They were murdered. If you have somebody who's giving you disinformation constantly, as Jim Jones was doing, saying that, that the United States had become a police state, to say, saying that they were coming to get you, saying that they were going to take away your children, and you have you have to understand that where they were in the middle of the jungle, in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, yeah.
Nowhere. I mean, they had to get there. You had to fly to Georgetown, which I defy anybody to point out on a map. In Guyana, to fly down to Georgetown. Then you had to take a boat for 24 hours. You had to take the boat out onto the open ocean, then, into a river and down a river. Okay? Then you had to get off the boat, and go miles into the jungle.
Yeah.
And that's where they were.
And we're talking no communication.
None.
Or no instruments of communication,
right.
Television
None.
or anything. Yeah.
The only instrument of communication they had was Jim Jones.
His voice.
On a loudspeaker.
Yeah.
Constantly talking and telling them what was happening and telling them that these people were now coming to get them and to kill them, and the only thing that they could do now was to commit suicide. You also had armed guards there to make sure that they took the poison.
Yeah.
So I think in some ways that's the why. Now why did Jim Jones order it? Who knows?
Who knows? It's a fantastic film. It's called Jonestown: The Life and Death of People's Temple, and I urge everyone out there to buy it, rent it, find it.
It's an excellent film.
It's a fantastic documentary. What's coming up next for you? What are you working on now?
We're actually just kind of finishing up a film. Jonestown was done for a show on PBS called American Experience, and we're finishing up another film for American Experience. They're doing a huge 5-part series on American Indian history, and we're doing the 5th show in the series about a siege at Wounded Knee, South Dakota, between the federal government and armed members of the American Indian movement and others in 1973.
The incident at Oglala?
I'm sorry?
It was the incident at Oglala, or?
Yeah, it kind of led to the incident at Oglala.
Right.
This was the siege that happened right before that.
Right. Okay.
71-day standoff between the federal government. It wasn't a standoff. There were like 130,000 rounds of ammunition.
Oh, that's right. Yes. Oh my.
Into this compound, and it's kind of this defining moment for so many people of American Indian descent.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
When do you expect that to air? You have a
That's not going to air until 2009 because
Oh, wow.
it's part of a series that American Experience is doing. So they're doing this. So the shows are all all in production now, but it won't air until 2000.